Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for finding the time to join us and take advantage of tonight's free information and educational webinar. I'm Amy Bach, and I am the Executive Director of United Policyholders, the charity that is bringing you this information tonight. So pleased to be joined by Tracy Garceau with the Colorado Division of Insurance, and then Rob Kimbrough, who has been a home builder in the foothills in Colorado since the late 80s. And we got 3 pre-submitted questions, so this may be a short program, which I'm sure no one will mind. But if you have some additional questions, you can type them in to the Q&A box, and our staff attorney, Elise Hicks, will either read them out loud or answer them as we go. But thank you for all of you, the 3 of you who submitted questions. And we're going to jump in to our PowerPoint here. Hang on. Okay, we're going to play from the beginning. All right. For those of you who've been with us before, I will I'll try to be brief. And for those of you who are new, we do this work through something called the Roadmap to Recovery Program. It is something that United Policyholders has been offering in wildfire impacted communities since 1991. And since the pandemic, we have been doing everything virtually by Zoom, which has its pros and cons. But we're very pleased to be able to be with you tonight with our special guests. A reminder that we are a not-for-profit, so we're not here to sell you anything, talk you into anything. We are here to inform you and help you. We have been doing this work since 1991, so we've got 30 years under our belts of hearing the kind of challenges people have after wildfires, and then trying to give people advice for the here and now, but also working in the legislature or with your state regulator to try to troubleshoot the problems that are impacting you, your household, and your neighbors. We don't take money from insurance companies, but we know a lot about insurance, and most of our funding comes from donations and grants. We have a professional staff, and then we have government and nonprofit partners. Tracy is one of our government partners. We have volunteers, and Rob is now one of them. These are our volunteers are either consumer-oriented professionals, such as builders like Rob, who just want to do a good job for their customers, and or some of the other folks we've had on previous calls that are either lawyers or public adjusters, or they do estimating. And then, of course, our previous catastrophic loss survivors that also inform a lot of our guidance. This is a reminder that on our website, you will find a library that we put together for, oops, sorry about that, for your community. And we are continually adding things to it to keep it current as issues develop. Just a reminder that this workshop is intended to be just guidance, general guidance, not formal legal advice. If you have a specific legal question, we recommend that you consult an experienced attorney, and we actually have some really good ones in Colorado that are listed in our professional help directory. They all specialize in insurance matters, helping the policyholder. But we certainly hope that you will not need an attorney because you have purchased insurance that gives you peace of mind and coverage and good claim service. So you shouldn't have to pay anyone to get that. But sometimes you do. So we are here with a menu of options. We don't give you a prescription. You must do this. Our view is the path that's right for your recovery is your path. And it often will take quite a bit of time to figure out that path. And that's what we're here for. I've been an insurance consumer advocate for my whole career. I became an attorney specifically so that no insurance lobbyist would be able to say to me, well, you wouldn't understand this because insurance policies are contracts and contracts are legal documents. So I was a policyholder advocate before I was a lawyer. So now I have both those hats. And this is what I do is try to be a source of help and a voice for people who've bought insurance and need help collecting the benefits that they've paid for. I'm so proud and pleased to be joined by Tracy Garceau, lead insurance analyst at DORA, which is the Department of Regulatory Agencies in your state. And under that umbrella is the Colorado Division of Insurance. And Tracy is employed there. And Tracy's kind enough to give us not just her email, but also a phone number. So thank you for that, Tracy.
My pleasure.
And Tracy, if there's anything you wanted to say before we get started about anything new that's been going on, you're welcome to. Otherwise, we can keep going.
I just want to say thank you, Amy, for having me again. And it's good to interact with people who are recovering. So thank you for what you do.
All right. Well, thanks for being part of that. We really appreciate it. Now, we always recommend if you're having a problem with your insurance claim, which many people do, that in addition to using our resources, and we are basically a self-help group, we give you all kinds of tools and samples on our website of letters and strategies, and to be your own best advocate. And then the second level, once you've done everything you can on your own with your insurance adjuster or going over their head, then you can also access free help from Tracy's agency. And they have a toll-free number. They have also, they have a website and an email address, and they will open, Tracy, do you open a file? I know that's how they do it in California. When somebody registers a complaint, do they get a number?
Yes. So our phone lines are open 8 to 5 every day, and we're pretty proud of how quick we answered. We're there to help. But yes, a formal complaint, once it's submitted, it does receive a file number, and it stays on record with the division for 6 years at least. And yes, so it's a formal complaint lodged against the company and reported annually.
And we really encourage people, if you do feel that your adjuster is not responding timely or is putting up obstacles that you think are not fair, give them a call and let them know, because they want to keep their finger on the pulse of how insurers are delivering on their promises and when they're not. And so even if it's, people sometimes worry, oh, well, if I complain, is my insurance company going to treat me worse? And it's kind of been our experience that it's the opposite, that, once you raise your hand and go to the department, the division rather, the insurance company will very often straighten up and fly right. And we actually have already had a few examples of that since last fall's tragic fires, of people going to the department. So this is Rob's official information with the department, with the state of Colorado. And the reason I showed this is because we invited Rob Kimbrough to be with us tonight because he is a very experienced builder. So he knows what it takes to get from a empty lot to a certificate of occupancy and a cozy rebuilt home. And I'm going to give him a chance to speak in a minute here. But I put this up here because all of you know now that after a wildfire, it can be very hard to find a quality builder that's not booked out for 3 years. And because your insurance, your temporary rent benefits have a time limit when they will no longer be available, and because you want to get on with things, and also make sure that you collect all your replacement cost benefits under your policy. It can be challenging to juggle finding a good builder that is available. But it is so important to to hire a builder that is reputable. And so that's why I showed this, because you can see that his business is in good standing. It took me 3 seconds to find him on the internet. And anybody that you're thinking about hiring, you do have to do your due diligence, because it's amazing, but there are bad actors that will come or sometimes they may not even be a bad actor. They may be a well-intentioned builder, and they just get overworked and they take on too many projects, and then things start to kind of fall apart. But welcome, Rob, for being with us this evening, and anything you want to say, you're welcome to say.
Okay, well, hopefully I have something to add to the conversation as this moves along. So.
Okay. And so, Rob, you did rebuild a number of homes that had burned after the 4 Mile fire. Is that right?
Oh, yes.
Okay, so you're familiar with
4 houses that I had built burned down. So I lost 4 houses that I built, and I'm rebuilding 2 right now that are on pieces of property where the house burned down in that fire. So they're still out there. So yeah, unfortunately, it's not always fun work, because people have lost their houses, and they move into a nice new house and it's all full of shiny, nice new stuff, but it's not their stuff, so you just have to, give them a new house to start all over again, but
Yes.
it's really hard on people to have lost everything.
It is very hard. Okay, so there are regulations in Colorado related to insurance claim estimates. And this is just a little summary of what your insurance company is obligated to do. They have to let you know that you can hire anyone you want to do the work. And then when you are in the process of getting your claim adjusted, they need to give you a copy of whatever their settlement offer is based on. If they tell you this is how much we owe you on your coverage A, they have to give you some backup for that, a copy of that. And then of course, they have to, their estimate of the replacement value of your dwelling needs to take into account the local costs and the real costs in the region. So that is in your Colorado law, and you will find that on our website. There's a link there to the rules. Another source for you of help if you are trying to negotiate with your insurer about the amount they owe you for your dwelling is this bulletin that Tracy's agency puts out. And again, here you have the law making clear that the insurer has to pay the prevailing competitive market price for the geographic area where the loss occurred. So they cannot lowball you with an exact estimate based on, Iowa tract home pricing. They've got to be realistic about what somebody like Rob would actually have to charge based on what lumber costs him and subcontractors and all that in that area. These are some of the rules in Colorado that require your insurer to make you a fair offer and negotiate with you fairly about what they owe you. So the first question we got says, my policy has a 20% of dwelling protection extended limits of building structure reimbursement. So they have this extended replacement clause that a lot of policies have these days that can give you extra money on top of what your your dwelling limit is on the declarations page. And this person is saying, if I buy another dwelling, can I still get that 20%? Now, I'm gonna ask Tracy to take a first crack, and then I can add my view about this.
So one of the things you'll hear a lot is you always have to look to the policy language, although they're very similar, and many of us who see them all the time can probably quote, but it's going to be, you always have to look to the policy. But we have seen in this fire situation, companies releasing the 20% on a signed contract for a new home. So, and I'm going to say here too, it varies between companies. Some companies are really helping, doing what they can. Others are sticking to the letter of the policy. And that sometimes can get tricky. The division can't interpret policy language. That's sometimes when you need to get a legal opinion on it. But again, it's working with the company. And because we've seen it happen, I think if you run into the issue where they don't offer it or allow it, call us. Because if the company has had a prior complaint where they ended up paying that, or most of the companies are, we can put pressure on them to make that payment for you.
So this is an example of a policy language that sort of talks about what happens if you rebuild at a different location. This is just an illustration of what Tracy is saying. But generally, a lot of your policies in Colorado are going to be silent on this. They're not going to talk about what happens if you don't rebuild on the original location. But if it's silent, it's strictly a negotiation, pretty much like what Tracy was saying, where you would be saying, look, I'm not asking you to pay any more toward the purchase of this replacement home than I would be asking you to pay if I rebuilt the home. So you're not, you insurance company, you're not losing, you're not paying more letting me buy a replacement home than you would be paying out if I rebuilt. So logic, money, arguments, but it's really, there's no law in Colorado to really help you. I want to go back for a split second here. In yet, I mean, we are going to try to get the law changed in Colorado, because it really, the law got changed in California to give you that very express right. You can take your money that you would have been eligible to collect towards the rebuild at the original location, like, kind, and quality, and you have to reach an agreement with the insurer over that amount. That's sort of always a key piece. You must reach agreement with your adjuster over what you'd be entitled to if you did rebuild. So that would include your dwelling limit. And then you've got to establish that it wouldn't be enough, and therefore you'd need that extra 20%. And then once you reach an agreement with your insurer on that dollar amount that they would owe you if you did rebuild, then you do your best to negotiate to be able to take that same amount of money and apply it towards the purchase. So again, it's really a logic argument. So even in California, where the law got passed that said that your insurer cannot limit how you use the money that they owe you, it took the legislature had to go back 3 times and say and change and keep on tightening the law to say, no, not just are you entitled to your dwelling limits towards the purchase, but you also are entitled to your, if you have extended limits, you also get those. So those got that became the law, but it took like 4 years. So you don't have that kind of time in Colorado. So your best bet is to try to get that agreement on what it would cost if you did rebuild, make them a logic argument. I think we might have a sample letter to help you phrase it, and just say, we're not asking you for more than you'd otherwise pay. We're asking you for the same amount, and just try to negotiate it. And if the department can help you, they will. But it does, of course, depend on what your policy says. Okay.
So does
Sure.
that 20%, would that also include the cost of bringing a home up to current codes? Or
that's
is that a
usually
separate pot of
different.
money?
That's usually a different bucket.
Okay,
So,
all right.
right, right.
And so you
We're
they
gonna
need
talk-
to be able to pay that too. They have to
We're
pay
talking
for,
about that right now.
okay,
Perfect
all right.
segue. So this person asked, State Farm is requiring us for our ordinance or law coverage. Now, when we talk about ordinance or law, that's language that State Farm uses, OL. Some insurers talk about building code compliance or building code upgrade or code and ordinance. It's all the same thing. It's all talking about betterment or improvement that you would need to make to your original home if you were replacing it to bring it up to current codes, current ordinances, current laws, all the same thing. So insurers generally say, we insure the home as it was. We don't cover improvements, betterments, unless you have coverage for that, and they sell it. So this person is asking, we have 20,000 extra for betterment, for improvement. We have that coverage, right? But but State Farm is not telling us how to figure out how we get that 20K, right? So the person said, we're going through this with our builder to make up what additional costs are in site building codes. Does this make sense? Yes, it makes sense. And these are our suggestions. And then I'm gonna let Bob speak to this. Our recommendation is you work with your builder. He or she should be familiar with local codes to break out the costs of those items, line items, and then provide that documentation to your insurer. And I'm sure some of you are thinking, well, what if I don't have a builder? What if I'm just trying to figure this out because I want to buy, right? But Bob, how can a person figure out what the local codes would require them to add to their project?
Yeah, it's almost the kind of thing, it's one thing just to estimate things kind of, but you're actually trying to, bid something with hard numbers. I mean, you have something to work with, plans, whether from the old house or, something to start with, then you'd have to requires a lot of work actually on everybody's part, because you have to have your electrician bid both, do it now, and roughly how much more is that than it would have cost 47 years ago in the example that was given there. And same with your insulation guy, and just depending on what codes have changed in your jurisdiction, you're going to need to talk to the professionals in that trade to get a rough number. And anybody's going to have some type of document to start with, a plan of what the house was before or what you're proposing to rebuild, or nobody, you can ask somebody, well, just how much per square foot. And that's one of my most hated questions ever, when people ask, well, just how much per square foot to build a house. Well, there's 500% range in that, depending on what you want. That's almost impossible, particularly in the mountains, where everything is so site dependent and all the rest. So you would just, boy, if you don't have a builder, you just have to go through all the different categories. I'm sure there's forms on, you can find a lot estimating forms online and stuff, and just go through the different line items and, what was it 47 years ago versus what is it now? And you just have to do some homework. If you're not the electrician or the plumber or the insulation contractor, you're going to have to do a little homework on what that difference is.
Yep.
And
what about going
go
down
away in a heartbeat from 47 years ago? That's just going to go right away.
Right. Doesn't seem like reaching 20,000 would be very hard.
Not at all.
No. So what about going to the building department and asking, them for, we have on our website, by the way, we have a sample code upgrade estimate And we actually have 2 samples of code upgrade estimates in our samples and examples section. And we also have a sort of a list of common ones. These are just a few of the code upgrades that you might encounter if you're rebuilding in the Boulder area. And I don't know off the top of my head whether Boulder is enforcing all of these for the 2020 wildfire impacted households. My guess is they probably are. Tracy,
They
do you
are.
know? They are.
They
They
are.
are. Okay. And so in Grand County, probably less strict, but also there definitely have been changes.
Oh, yeah, because everybody's into a, current, at least like the 2018 IRC, which is the code book. All building departments, unless you go to Alaska, are using something like that. And so just even the base codes in any jurisdiction are going to be significantly different than they would 20 years ago, much less 47 years ago. As far
Yes.
as the building department giving you any kind of guidance, I wouldn't count on that. I think they want to kind of stay out of any of this. They'll give you, they'll answer your questions, kind of. And, the Boulder County Building Department, they're all really good people, but, this is not their game. They don't really want to get in the middle of, between a homeowner and their insurance company.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
All right.
Yeah, I wouldn't count on that.
Okay. So Elise, do we have some other questions related to this topic that came in during the program?
Yes, we have one that's on point from anonymous attendee. If our estimate to rebuild from our insurance company is below the going rate in Grand County, what is the best way to proceed to try to get more money? Our insurance company said that they will only pay for the dwelling plus 30% additional that we have on our policy plus code upgrade, which will come when and if we rebuild. We have received our policy dwelling plus the 30%.
So wait, can you read the beginning part again?
Sure. If our estimate to rebuild from our insurance company is below the going rate in Grand County,
Okay.
what is the best way to proceed?
So, right, the best way to proceed is to get a second opinion, is to get an opinion from a builder in the area. Because for all the reasons we've talked about, that a lot of the estimates insurers will offer are based on this Xactimate computer program. But even so, we always advise to get 2, if possible 3 estimates. Any comments on that, Bob or Tracy?
Well, you back after the 4 Mile fire, I actually had quite a few people hire me. They were not going to hire me as a builder, but they hired me just to put together bids to fight with your insurance company. And I think on most of them, we got anywhere from 1/3 to 50% more than what the insurance company had originally offered. I mean, they will lowball you. They will say, we'll give you a check tomorrow. Just sign here that this is the settlement. And so rule 1 is never take the insurance company's first offer, ever. And then, coming at it from a builder's point of view, it takes a lot of time to put together a bid, for both the builder and all of my subs. Don't expect it for free. I charged people and we were right up front. They weren't going to hire me to build. They were going to do it themselves, or they had somebody else in mind. But it's a cost. It's a lot of somebody's time, and just don't expect builders to waste their time, spending 40 hours bidding something that they're not going to get the job on. I mean, you always have to competitively bid if you want a job. That's part of the business. But after a fire, the phone's going to be ringing all the time, and just get more information and fight with your insurance company. And, but, you just, like you said, get several bids.
Right.
And in your area who know the codes and who knows what it costs to do business in your area.
One other thing that you can do if you don't want to spend the money on getting a comparison bid, or you want to try one other thing first, is you can watch one of our recorded video workshops, Scoop on Scoped, where we actually walk you through taking the estimate that your insurance company gives you and correcting areas where they were clearly wrong. So like the height of the ceiling, things that you might be able to figure out on your own. But really getting a second opinion, and even if you have to pay for it, it is probably the quickest and best way to improve the settlement and get beyond it.
Do you give people guidance on how to read an exactimate bid? Because they're the biggest pile of 50 pages of line item garbage that you will ever
Well,
see.
we do.
Okay.
Yeah,
good.
that's what the Scoop on Scope workshop is all about.
Okay.
So,
good,
and
good.
those of you who did not have code upgrade coverage, there is a law that has been in effect that does require your insurance company to offer you a minimum of 10% of law and ordinance coverage. So, as well as extended replacement. So if you didn't get those offered to you, that would be something to discuss with Tracy's agency.
I could just say one thing, Amy,
Sure.
is that, again, I'm going to say, I saw the company name, and so sometimes the statute doesn't go to the granular level. So if we don't have something in statute, we go to policy. If there's nothing specific in policy or it's vague, we go to company procedure. So companies are setting precedents with us. So if they're getting a signed contract to rebuild, and then they're at that point, they're tendering all of your limits, they need to be doing that on every single claim. So, right, so it's statute, if it's not there, go to policy, and then you go to procedure, and they have to be consistent. If not, we will require them to be consistent. So with the number of complaints we've handled, there's been quite a bit of precedent set. So it's worth it. If a consumer is concerned about getting that, give us a call. We can have a discussion. And again, it may be valuable to file a complaint based on company procedure.
So this is great to hear, Tracy, because you know, that's the reality. I know that's reality, that insurance companies make business decisions all the time. You know, you want to think, oh, everything is by the books, but it often isn't. Sometimes insurers will relax requirements, and they absolutely should in situations that require it. And certainly if you are just looking for a fair settlement, and you're not trying to you know, collect more than you're entitled to, you're just trying to collect what you're entitled to, not less, you know, very much of a negotiation. And I encourage you to take advantage of Tracy's agency, because what I'm hearing from her loud and clear is that they are holding insurers accountable on the complaints that are coming to them. So we have another question here, and same sort of answer, similar in that there isn't any law that we can find in Colorado that says what the rules are if you buy or rebuild at a different location. So if your policy is silent about that, and there's nothing in your policy that says you cannot buy or rebuild at a different location, or you must live there, you know, then it's sort of a open season here, and it's what you can negotiate. But for what we have been hearing from a lot of the people that volunteer with us that bought a replacement home is most of them just reached a settlement with their insurance company on what they were owed on coverage A. The insurance company cashed them out, which in most cases means they were probably underinsured. So there wasn't a balance owed between the depreciated actual cash value and the replacement, or the insurer just decided to cut them a check for policy limits, which happens pretty frequently. If your insurer cut you a check for policy limits, then what people have been telling us is the insurer doesn't care what you do with the money in that situation. Technically, you know, if they didn't cut you a check for full policy limits, and they are holding back some money, waiting for proof that you actually purchased, as long as you purchased it and you established that you spent that money, you should be able to collect the balance between the ACV, the actual cash value, and the replacement value. And as far as whether you have to live there or not, that should not matter. Again, as long as you're only asking the insurance company for the same amount of money that they would have owed you had you rebuilt. So you're not trying to profit from your loss. You're just taking the money that you would have put into a rebuild and putting it into a purchase. And as long as it's the same amount, it shouldn't matter to them whether you turn around and sell that again or not. That's my read. Tracy, anything different from your
The only
view?
thing the only thing I would suggest is if you rebuild and you put it on the market and it sits empty, be careful because there's vacancy clauses in your policy. So somebody has to be living there. So just make sure that the characteristics of your lifestyle at that moment are reflected in the policy. Because someone has to be living in the home. There's a vacancy versus not. So just be careful with that. But I've never heard of a requirement that you actually have to live in the home once it's rebuilt, or if you buy another home, a replacement home. I've never heard of that.
No, but we're hearing crazy things. And I think it's, like, for example, some people are telling us that their insurer is saying, well, the house you bought has more bedrooms than the house that you lost. Well, that should not matter at all. But the quality of claim adjusters varies wildly, like any other profession. Some of them are green, they just started. Some of them, maybe they have, they got a chip on their shoulder and they don't want to make your life easy, or maybe they are a good egg and they want to bend over backwards to help you. We hope you have the latter. But again, logic should prevail in this situation. As long as you're not trying to rip them off, you're just asking them for what they would have owed you anyway, it shouldn't be a problem. Elise, let's get to the next questions that got submitted.
Okay, so Jerry Osborne asked, I'm having difficulty finding a builder that State Farm approves of. Do you have any suggestions? I still can't get to my property due to the washed out roads. He also added, I'm concerned about the 2-year time limit they are giving me to rebuild. My property is remote and I have a total loss in the Cameron fire.
So your insurance company doesn't have the right to, well, how to let Tracy take this one.
Absolutely. Your insurance company has no say whatsoever in who you hire, and they are required to work with them. So, that part of the question is very concerning to me, that they won't work with a particular contractor. As for the time limit, it is an issue. The division is well aware of it. The commissioner is well aware of it. He is very sensitive to the characteristics of our land. And if indeed that there's going to be delays because they can't get to the site or for whatever reason that is out of your control. So as long as you're not delaying it, as long as these are natural delays or out of your control, the commissioner is going to expect the companies to comply, to work with you on these timeframes. So be aware of that. It's some folks are already asking for extensions. It's a little early in some cases, but as it gets closer, ask for the extension. I think some would require it in writing and list the reasons. And if they say no, let us know, because the commissioner is definitely aware of that and has made it an issue.
Thank you. And okay, let's get to the next question.
All right, so Conley Schultz asked, Rob, can you provide your email or phone number? I'd like to speak with you about rebuilding. Thank you.
Okay, I'd be happy to.
We can put that in the
You can't
chat.
answer because of where they are. If they're over in Grand Lake, I'm not their guy. But how should I just like verbally answer that question?
If you're
I don't know what your
comfortable,
rules are, so
it's fine, because because you come through Bruce Honeyman, that means that you're family. No, I mean, if you can you can type it into the chat if you'd like, Rob. Do you know how to do that? Or you
Yeah,
can
well,
just,
I'm not much of a, well, I see a button that says chat. I suppose I could
Yeah.
click on that and see what
yeah,
happens.
yeah, and then you can type in,
No, that,
you can
You can
type
do that.
in to panelists and attendees, or you can just, I don't want to put you on this. There we go.
There you go.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
well, there's my,
right.
it's all right there. So
That was an
just-
easy
You are
question.
quicker than me. Send it out to the world and it's all good.
All right, thank you. Next question.
Question is, could you explain the difference between a right of entry versus insurance coverage?
Okay, a right of entry, generally speaking, is the form that you sign if you are going to participate in a coordinated debris removal program, where you're saying, I agree that the county or whoever it is who's handed you that right of entry form is allowed to come on my property and do work. That's my understanding when you talk about a right of entry form. And the connection with insurance is that depending on the wording, the right of entry form may say that that you are assigning your insurance proceed, however much insurance you have to pay for debris removal, that you are assigning that to whoever is clearing your debris. That's generally my understanding of a read of this question, that when people participate in a coordinated debris removal, you have to sign a right of entry form, and usually you have to say, and I will turn over to the county or the city, whoever's coordinating the debris removal, my insurance benefits for debris removal. That's my guess for this question. Tracy, anything to add?
I would think the same way. That's a little bit out of my expertise, but I did attend a couple of county meetings early on, and they were talking about right of entry. So I would think that's associated with the debris. They were waiting for that approval so they could go in and start removing some debris.
Right. And for, you generally have a choice. You can figure out how much money you have for debris removal by reading your policy, and then you can hire your own person. But at this point, I think probably whoever asked the question is planning to participate in a coordinated program. And it has worked out pretty well for most people. You're always going to get some people who feel like, oh, the guy that the county hired went, scraped, over excavated, or took out a retaining wall that I didn't want. But generally, it's a good way to get your lot cleared without going out of pocket, and get your lot cleared safely. That's generally our view. I have not seen the coordinated debris removal documents that are might be available in Grand County, and I'm almost positive Boulder's not doing coordinated debris removal. Next question.
Does the insurance company not address or provide code upgrade information?
Right. So in theory, so Rob, I'm guessing you're not a huge fan of Xactimate, the computer program that insurers are using.
Good bet.
But it does have a feature for breaking out code upgrade costs. Yes. How do you, Rob, when you do an estimate, or when you did these estimates for folks after 4 Mile, how did you break out code upgrades?
Well, I'd start out, I'd bid the house to rebuild it, up to current code, kind of as it was the day before the fire, but up to current code, then I would back up, and figure out, okay, what would it have cost? How much less would it have cost to, insulate it as per the year it was built?
Right.
And just so I could back those costs out, because I kind of wanted to start out, my big number wanted to be, this is what the insurance company owes you. Because this is what it's going to cost to rebuild your house up to current code, all the rest. That was kind of what I wanted to start with. Then I'd back out as best I could. And some of it's very easy, like if I have to add solar panels to meet, hers requirement. Well, that's a really cut and dried number just for solar panels. Some of the other are a little bit squishier as far as just like electrical and plumbing, to bring it up to current code versus whatever year the house was built. So, it is, I guess like everything else, it's an estimate, and you just have to be able to justify your number because the, claims adjuster, whoever is just, it's going to be this long discussion to justify all my numbers, both what it's going to cost to bring up to current code and how much of that is just the code upgrades. So
Yeah.
I just have to be able to justify my numbers.
Right. So it's just really a matter of breaking them out. And I mean, the adjuster's doing an estimate, the builder's doing an estimate, they're all estimates.
Yeah, we just,
It's not scientific.
no, it's not, unfortunately, and that's just kind of the way that's, and everybody uses different multipliers and, all the rest. And that's where a lot of times when I start fighting with Xactimate, I mean, the multipliers they use are just really absurd sometimes, like cost per square foot tile and so on. It has nothing to do with the real world. And so a lot of times you really get into just arguing about, the multipliers that they're using, much less the amount of square footage of tile. It's like, how much per square foot are they allowing you?
Right. Right. And that's, that's a big frustration that we have at United Policyholders is that, Xactimate is it looks fancy, 50 pages long and thick and lots of lines, but that doesn't make it accurate. That just makes it a 50-page document with a lot of lines. Now it is the basis. We have to live with it, right? Because that is what insurers are using. Now we can.
That's where you start. That's
Right.
you argue from there.
Right. So you build off it. Like I said, you find the errors in it, or you find a builder that will help you, and we have in previous sessions talked to some other builders, but I think the bottom line is you got to find somebody who knows what they're talking about. I don't know, Rob, if you're going to get dragged into doing some as built reconstruction estimates, but we're not asking you to certainly to do those things for free. So it's a business. It's a business, and builders generally like to get paid to build.
Yeah, that's what
Not to do
I don't like
paperwork.
sitting in the office. I like to be out
Right,
building.
right.
So-
Right. Elise, what's our next question?
Following up on the ordinance coverage, is it possible to get that coverage if we buy a newer home than we lost?
Anyone want to take a crack at that?
Again, I'm going to
Yeah.
say, so,
Okay.
yeah, so I'm sorry. So I think, again, it's going to be the company, right? Because there's specific policy language, but precedence is being set. So we're looking for top dollar on your policy if you buy something else, right? So that's what you paid for. So I'm not sure, you'd have to look at what the exact language, mostly it's an incurred expense. So it's a hard question to answer without seeing the specifics.
Yeah. And, we've asked a lot of fire survivors, what kind of documentation did your insurance company ask you for in order to release the money that they owed you on your dwelling? And a lot of people said they didn't ask for anything because we had already settled by the time we made the purchase. But if you're not in that situation, people typically, you just have to get either something from the realtor. That's what we've always been telling people is, get the documentation from the realtor or the purchase price of the home and provide it to the adjuster. If you get into a situation where the insurer says, drags their feet or delay, that's when because you don't want to lose the house. Very often when you're trying to buy a house, you might be competing with somebody else who wants to buy that house, and time is of the essence. But the bottom line is that the insurer just needs generally they need some proof of the price of the house that you want to purchase as a replacement in order to meet that, what is often the policy requirement that you actually replace the asset in order to get the full replacement value. Okay, any more questions?
We have two more.
Okay,
Pamela is
and then after that, we're cutting it off.
okay. Pamela is asking for a Grant County contact for a builder, if you have one. She needs a second estimate on her log home.
Okay, so the Grand County Builders Association is a wonderful partner of ours. And we did a workshop, which is recorded, and I believe we had Steve Jensen, who's with the Builders Association, also like Rob, not looking for business, has projects booked out for the foreseeable future. But I would say the Grand County Builders Association would be a great resource. And there's a guy named Bob Hunnis, who might even be on, here we go. In the chat, we've given you the Grand County Builders Association website. They are, the Builders Association has been on this from day one. It's meaning aware that fire impacted households needed people to help them challenge lowball exactment estimates and or document their rebuild costs. So I would definitely get in touch with them.
The one thing I would add is she mentioned it was a log home. That is a completely different animal.
Ah,
A normal
okay.
stick-built house. And so make sure the builder you talk to knows about log homes, and make sure that your insurance adjuster knows the difference, because it is, depending on what kind of log home it was, it is a completely different beast than a standard stick-built house.
So, okay, doesn't surprise me. So, and that's a great point. You'll be looking for somebody who's actually built that style house. All right. Last question.
Art is asking, State Farm is making us do an ordinance and law for a rebuild, which is not apples to apples. Does that make sense?
Ordinance or law? What? Read it one more time.
State Farm is making us do an ordinance and law for a rebuild, which is not apples to apples. Does that make sense?
Okay, I'm gonna guess that what they're talking about is that, like most fire survivors, this household doesn't want to rebuild the exact same home that they lost, right? Most people want to do something a little different. And the adjuster is probably saying, okay, we will only pay for code upgrades that are incurred. And this is where you, and this is the sort of the bad news, which is you really do have to reach an agreement with the insurance company on the cost of replacing what you had, even if that's not the house you want to rebuild. And that's, I know, is very frustrating for a lot of people, because like Rob said, builders are not going to want to take the time to give you a super detailed estimate on a project that they know you're not going to hire them to build, right? If you're not going to be rebuilding like the exact same house, why should they take the time to break out the code upgrades when they've already given you a proposal for the house you want to build? The problem is, unless you get somebody to take the time, as we were talking about earlier, to break out, to do that sort of, to estimate that project, the original, rebuilding the original home, and break out those code upgrades, it's very hard to reach an agreement, because that is apples to oranges, right? The house that you had versus the one you want to rebuild. But the bottom line is, you can't even move forward with the project to rebuild the one you want until you've reached an agreement on what it would cost to put the old one back. Anybody want to add to that?
Well, I think too, with the limited amount of funds on it, usual for upgrades, and you're rebuilding a new home, I would start with the large items. I mean, every home needs electric, right? So plumbing, I would start with those big items and try to work backwards. And then, because I mean, the home is they insured a particular home for a specific ACV, RCV. And so you're rebuilding, they do have similarities. So they may seem like they don't compare, but I think you could make the argument that, yeah, they do. They insured a particular home. You have to build it. Maybe it doesn't look the same way, or it's not the same size, but it still has the same component. That's my take on it.
Yeah. Rob?
Yeah, because I mean, they're insuring the way the house was the day before the fire,
Right.
and so that's what they're gonna insure, that's what they're gonna pay you for. Then, if you want to build a different house, well, that's up to you, but as far as the settlement, including the upgrades and, code upgrades, and extended coverages and all the rest, that's based on what the house was that you had. And so that's where you have to start as far as, because it always is a negotiation with the insurance company, but the negotiation is based on what you had, not what you want to have, and if you want to build something that's 50% more expensive, well, that's up to you, but that has nothing to do with what you're going to settle with the insurance company for. That's
Right.
what you had before is what that's about.
Right. And believe me, we know how frustrating it is, to have to try to get a detailed price estimate on something that no one's going to be building. But it has been our experience over the years that it's generally worth what you have to pay. Now, what you have to pay to get somebody to do a decent estimate can vary. We've seen people do it from anywhere from $3,500 up to $15,000 just for the builder's time to put together that detailed documentation. I don't know what people are charging right now in Colorado. I know we have gotten a number of names of people who of outfits that say that they're doing that work. I feel more comfortable having, if you're in Grand County, having you go through their builders association or going through the Boulder. I don't know, Rob, is the Builders Association active in your area? I mean, I certainly, if Rob would do it, great. If maybe you can refer people if you can't.
Yeah, there's a couple of the Colorado Green Builder Association is actually very active in Boulder County, because Boulder, both by law and just kind of the clients, is very big on green building, so that's quite an active group and has some very good builders in it. Like more the Home Builders Association is more the track builder type company, so a completely different game. But probably the Colorado Green Builders Association is where I'd start looking for good contractors for mountain houses. As far as in Boulder County, I think that's probably a better place to start.
Okay. And so that is going to bring us to the end of our program. I see there's one more question. If it's a quickie, Elise, throw it out there.
He says, can you provide a template for O&L negotiation? And I'm just looking on the website.
So yeah, if you can, so in the samples and examples library, Elise, those two links that Emily put in our team meeting earlier.
Yes.
The one that you want to look for is in that middle section of examples. The trade associate, the code upgrades. It's common claim documents. So if you can find that, there's two items in there on code upgrades. There's one is an exactimate format estimate with code upgrades broken out and priced, and that's a pretty good tool to use. This is kind of like what Tracy was saying. The code upgrades are not going to be that different with the project in terms of the categories. It's going to be electrical, plumbing, windows, siding, generally. So once you kind of get your arms around those categories, it should be easier to negotiate. So on this screen, you can see, I'm not just asking, I'm begging. If you haven't taken our survey yet, and Tracy, thank you so much for helping us get the word out about this. We are really hoping to get a little bit bigger sample. We've only got like 51 folks who've taken our 2020 Colorado Wildfire survey. We the reason we need you to do this and get your friends and neighbors to do this that have been impacted as well is it really does help us put pressure on the insurance companies to be flexible. And it helps us identify if they've been flexible, then we want them to be, as Tracy said, consistent and be flexible with other people. So we're just, the survey is not, we're not trying to pry into your personal business. We just really want to know how you're doing, where you are in the process, and what may be tripping you up. And if you enter, you can keep yourself anonymous, but your email will be entered into a drawing to win a $50 Amazon gift card. So if you haven't done that, please do it. We're going to keep the survey open for a little longer, hoping that we will get a bigger response. I want to thank again Rob Kimbrough, a quality local mountain community builder since the late 80s, and Tracy Garceau, a professional insurance expert who is not only does she work for your Colorado Insurance Commissioner, Mike Conway, who's a great guy, but she knows a lot about insurance and is very practical. And so, just really so proud and so glad to have the two of you with us tonight. I hope we've answered all the questions. It looks like we did. And thank you all for your time and attention. This program was recorded. If you missed something, you can email info@uphelp.org. And thank you so much again to our funders that are making it possible for us to bring you this series. We will have our next program coming up for Colorado. The Survivor to Survivor forums are for all 2020 fire impacted households. We've got one on June 1st. That's next Tuesday. And that's where you can chat kind of informally with people who are in your situation, as well as people who were in your situation and are now kind of came out the other side. So that's what we've got coming up. And I hope you all have a wonderful Memorial Day weekend, or at least a peaceful and pleasant one, if not a wonderful one. I know that this may not be the time in your life to describe anything as wonderful, but we hope that that you are safe and moving forward in whatever way that you can. So Carolyn Winter, thank you for the tech. Elise, thank you for the research. Did we get that link in the chat for the okay, just if you want to get that the sample of the code upgrade breakout, just send us an email if you can't find it on the website. Oh, there it is. Excellent. Excellent. All right. So thanks again to our panelists. Check the chat before we wrap up for the link to a sample of a code upgrade estimate. And good night, one and all.